So now also in the monocots is the Poaceae. So one of the most economically important families in the world, crucial for understanding the modern distribution of ecosystems across the globe. Vital for human agriculture. It's hard to overstate the importance of the Poaceae. It's not as diverse as something like the orchids, so about 12,000 species, but still quite a lot. There are typically herbaceous plants, as you're all aware, but there are many woody ones, especially in the paleotropics, like China, Thailand, Southeast Asia has many, many species of bamboo, which are woody grasses that act in a functional sense like trees. The flowers are highly modified based on everything that we looked at before, so they're hard to even recognize as flowers. They're so modified in some cases. They're wind pollinated, and that's part of the reason. So everything we've looked at so far has been animal pollinated. So flowers are showy to attract animal pollinators. And various different parts of the tissues can be showy and can be the attractant. But with wind pollinated system, you don't need any kind of attractant. And so the structures become very, very different and hard to recognize that they're actually the same thing that we've been looking at before. C4 photosynthesis is common in grasses, and that's part of why they dominate so much of the globe in the arid, hotter parts of the globe. We'll talk about that more later on in the course. And of course, the basal meristem, which Angela touched on in her first lecture, only exists during grasses. So everything else grows from the top. Grasses grow from the bottom. And that is also part of why they were so successful in dominating parts of the world where there's large vertebrate herbivores eating them from the top. They can keep growing from the bottom, and you end up with this ability to have something like a lawn or a grassland comes from the evolutionary innovation that is the basal meristem. So it's also hard to overstate how important grasses are for human agriculture. So over half of dietary food that humans consume globally comes from Poaceae, from the grasses. So rice is about 20%, wheat is about 20%, maize or corn is about 5%, and then lots of other grains provide the other 6%. So this huge amount of what humans eat are grass seeds. So the structure is a little bit complicated. So you have this whole thing. So the flowers are small. That's the first thing to realize. And the whole thing is the inflorescence. So in vast majority of species, that inflorescence can be a variety of different types, panicle, spikes, other types also. Within that are little sub-inflorescences, and those are typically called spikelets. Those spikelets consist of many flowers, all kind of compressed together. And now the perianth, or the petals and the sepals, are super modified into two. So there's only really two left, and they get special names called the palea and the lemma. You don't have to memorize those, but it's worth knowing that grasses are so modified that they've even kind of changed all the nomenclature when you start to look at grass flowers. Then inside of those, inside the palea and the lemma, you get the male bits and the female bits. And often, or sometimes, you have them all in one flower, and sometimes you have male flowers and female flowers separately. So those are all contained within there. And they're all highly reduced, at least relative to some things, except that sometimes the anthers and the stigmas can be quite large and sort of exerted. So because they're wind pollinated and they produce so much pollen, you need to produce big anthers, and they have to kind of drape out and send their pollen up into the wind, and that's why we're all getting hay fever at the moment, is all of these anthers are dumping lots of pollen into the wind, and that's what's ending up in our sinuses and causing irritation.